Hey deep divers, welcome back to the channel. Hit that like button and subscribe so you don't miss any future deep dives. Okay, today it's the 2024 election. Things are getting interesting, to say the least. We're diving into an article from the Daily Beast, just came out yesterday, November 4th, called 5 Reasons to Believe Kamala Harris is Going to Beat Trump. I mean, everyone's on edge, right? This election is a total nail-biter. But this article is saying, hold on, there are some signs pointing to a Harris win, even though all the betting odds favor Trump. So what we're going to do today is unpack all 5 of the arguments this author makes, see if they hold up. So, deep divers, get your thinking caps on, and let's jump in. The author, his name is Harry Lambert, starts by saying, yeah, predicting elections, that's basically impossible, like trying to read tea leaves, especially after what happened in 2020. But then gives us 5 reasons why he thinks Harris might just win.
It's fascinating. Lambert doesn't just focus on the usual swing states, the ones everyone's always talking about. He brings up these 2 polls, one in Iowa and one in Kansas, and they both show a surprising swing towards Harris.
Hold on, Iowa and Kansas, those are like hardcore Republican states.
Exactly, and that's what makes this so interesting. These are not places you'd normally expect to see a shift towards the Democrats. It could be a really big deal.
Okay, I'm hooked. What do these polls actually say?
All right, so the Iowa poll, it was done by this pollster named Ann Seltzer. She's got a really good reputation it shows Harris winning the state by 3 points.
3 points.
Yeah, 3 points. And remember, Trump won Iowa by 8 points back in 2020.
Wow. So that's like an 11-point swing, potentially?
Right. It's huge. And then you've got the Kansas poll. It's called the Kansas Speaks survey, and it shows a similar trend. Could be as much as a 10-point swing towards the Democrats there.
Okay, so if these numbers are right, this is way bigger than anyone thought. What's causing this shift in these, traditionally red states? What's going on?
Well, Lambert says a lot of it comes down to women. Both of these polls show a big surge in support for Harris among women, especially after the Dobbs decision and all the new abortion restrictions that followed.
Yeah, seems like Dobbs really energized a lot of women voters.
It really does. And it's not just a small bump in the polls either. Nationally, there's a 6-point enthusiasm gap between women and men. So women are just as engaged as they were back in 2020, but men, their interest has really dropped off.
Interesting. So some people are saying that Trump's making gains with non-white voters and younger voters, but Lambert's argument is that those gains are mostly happening in states that are already going to vote Democrat anyway.
Exactly. So even if he does win over some of those voters, it might not actually translate into electoral votes.
That's a good point.
Yeah.
Okay, here's where it gets even more interesting. Lambert actually questions whether pollsters are overcorrecting for Trump and that maybe they're underestimating Harris, just like what happened in the midterms back in 22.
Yeah, this is a really important point. After 2016 and even to the 2022 midterms, there's been all this talk about shy Trump voters, right?
Right.
People who support Trump, but they just don't want to tell the pollsters.
Right.
So the pollsters are so worried about making the same mistake again, about underestimating Trump's support, they might actually be overcompensating, and that could lead to them underestimating Harris.
So it's like the pendulum swinging too far the other way.
Exactly. And that could give us a completely distorted view of where the race actually stands.
Right. We have to remember polls are just one piece of the puzzle, right? They're a snapshot in time, and they can be affected by all sorts of things.
Absolutely. You can't treat them as if they're like the final word on what's going to happen.
It's like trying to predict the weather.
Mm-hmm.
You can look at the forecast, but there's always a chance of a sudden storm popping up.
Yeah, good analogy. And in this election, it feels like there are a lot of potential storms brewing out there.
For sure. Okay, so we've got these unexpected swings in these traditionally red states. We've got the power of the women voters. We've got this whole overcorrection thing. But Lambert also says some of the gains Trump seems to be making, they might not be as big as they look. What's that about?
Right. So there's been a lot of talk about Trump potentially winning over non-white voters and younger voters, right?
Right. Yeah.
But Lambert says we need to look closer at where those gains are actually happening.
So it's not just the overall numbers, but it's also about where those numbers are coming from.
Exactly. He points out that a lot of these gains are concentrated in states that are already solidly Democratic.
So even if Trump wins over some of these voters, it might not actually make a difference in the outcome of those states.
Right. It's not just about winning the popular vote. You have to win the right combination of states to win the presidency.
It's like a giant game of political chess. You have to be strategic about where you're focusing your energy.
Absolutely. And that's what makes this election so fascinating to watch. Both campaigns are trying to figure out how to appeal to voters in the right places, in the right ways, to give themselves the best chance of winning.
Well, the election is just a few days away, and the tension is definitely building. But one thing is clear. This is going to be one for the history books.
Oh, for sure. No matter who wins, this election is going to have a huge impact on the future of the country.
Okay, deep divers, we've covered a lot of ground today. Make sure to drop your thoughts and predictions down in the comments below. We'll be back soon with part 2, where we're going to dig even deeper into the implications of this election and what it all means for you. So don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell. See you soon.
One thing that really jumps out at me from this article is how Lambert focuses on looking beyond the usual battleground states. It's like he's saying, we need to broaden our perspective on where this election might be won or lost.
I totally agree. It's like everyone's always watching the same few states, But this time around, the real action might be happening somewhere completely unexpected.
Right. And Lambert uses some pretty strong evidence to support that idea, too. He points to those specific polls, like that Seltzer poll in Iowa and the Kansas Speaks survey. They both suggest that something real might be happening in these traditionally red states.
It's like those polls are throwing everyone's predictions out the window. I mean, nobody expected Iowa and Kansas to be such key players in this election.
And that's what makes this whole thing so fascinating, We can't just rely on those old assumptions about which states are important. The electoral map is constantly changing. And this year, it feels like anything could happen.
Okay, so we've got these surprising poll numbers, and Lambert's emphasizing the importance of women voters. But he also brings up this idea of pollsters potentially overcorrecting for Trump. Can you explain what that means?
Yeah, this is a really crucial point, and it gets to the heart of how we understand polls. After 2016 and even the 2022 midterms, there's been so much discussion about shy Trump voters, people who support Trump but just don't admit it to pollsters.
So are you saying the pollsters are basically panicking, trying to avoid making those same mistakes again?
Exactly. They're so worried about underestimating Trump's support that they might be overcompensating, and that could lead to them underestimating Harris's support.
So it's like that pendulum swinging too far in the other direction. And that could give us a totally inaccurate picture of where the race really stands.
It's a perfect analogy. We have to remember that polls are just one piece of the puzzle. They're a snapshot in time, and they can be influenced by all sorts of factors. We can't treat them as if they're the definitive answer to who's going to win.
It's kind of like trying to predict the weather, right?
Yeah.
You can check the forecast, but there's always a chance of a surprise storm.
Exactly. And in this election, it definitely feels like there are a lot of potential storms on the horizon.
Absolutely. All right, so we've talked about those unexpected swings in traditionally red states, the power of women voters, and this whole idea of overcorrection. But Lambert also makes the argument that some of the gains Trump seems to be making might not be as significant as they appear. Can you unpack that for us?
Sure. So there's been a lot of talk about Trump potentially getting support among non-white voters and younger voters, right?
Yeah.
But Lambert argues that we need to look more closely at where those gains are actually happening.
So it's not just about the overall numbers, but it's also about the location of those voters.
Exactly. He highlights that a lot of these gains are concentrated in states that are already reliably Democratic.
So even if Trump manages to win over some of those voters, it might not actually change the outcome in those states.
That's the key point here. It's not simply about winning the popular vote. You have to win the right combination of states to actually win the presidency.
It's like a giant, complicated game of political chess. You have to be really strategic about where you focus your efforts.
Absolutely. And that's what makes this election so captivating to observe. Both campaigns are trying to figure out how to connect with voters in the right places in the most effective ways to increase their chances of winning.
Well, with the election just days away, the anticipation is definitely building.
Yeah.
But one thing is clear. This is going to be a historic election, no matter what happens.
Oh, definitely. Regardless of who wins, this election is going to have a major impact on the future of this country.
Okay, deep divers, we've delved into a lot of information today. We've examined those potential surprises in unexpected states, discussed the power of women voters, and explored the complexities of polls and the Electoral College. But we're not finished yet. In part 3 of this deep dive, we're going to step back and consider some of the broader implications of this election. What are the real stakes, and what does it all mean for you? Stay tuned, folks. Welcome back, deep divers. We're in the home stretch now of our deep dive into the 2024 election. Been looking at this Daily Beast article, 5 Reasons to Believe Kamala Harris is going to beat Trump. And man, it's been a wild ride. We talked polls, swing states, the power of women voters, but now I want to zoom out a bit. What's really at stake in this election?
This goes way beyond just picking a president. It's about like the whole direction of the country, the values we want to prioritize, the future we're building, not just for us, but, for generations to come.
So we're not just deciding who gets to sit in the Oval Office. We're talking about stuff that hits us every day, right? Like climate change, healthcare, the economy, social justice issues.
Exactly. All these issues touch every part of our lives and this election. This is what decides how we tackle all that.
And it's not just about what's happening here in the U.S. either, right? I mean, America's place on the world stage, that's on the ballot too.
Totally. The result of this election, it's going to send ripples across the globe. It'll affect how we deal with other countries, trade agreements, global challenges like climate change, you name it.
It's kind of mind-blowing to think that one election can have such a massive impact.
Yeah.
But let's bring it back to our deep divers out there. What does all this mean for them? How can they make their voices heard in all of this?
Okay, first things first, stay informed. Don't just skim headlines or get all your news from social media. You got to dig deeper. Read articles from those sources you can trust. Listen to podcasts like this one, obviously. And talk to people, even people who see things differently than you do. Have those real conversations.
Couldn't agree more. Knowledge is power, deep divers. But it's not enough just to be informed. You know what I mean? You got to get involved. Volunteer for a campaign. Donate to a cause that's close to your heart. Talk to your friends and family about these issues.
Exactly. Every voice counts in a democracy. Don't underestimate the power you have to make a difference.
This election, it reminds us that our democracy, it's precious, but it's also fragile. It needs us to participate, to think critically, to be willing to have those tough conversations, even when we don't agree on everything.
Well said. This deep dive has been quite the journey. We've learned so much together, unpacked the arguments, looked at the data, and explored what this historic election might mean for all of us.
And now it's your turn, deep divers. Get out there, make those choices, and make your voices heard. Don't forget to hit that like button, subscribe to our channel for more of these deep dives, and drop your thoughts down in the comments. We love hearing from you. Until next time, stay curious, stay engaged, and keep diving deep.